everyone. Hey, it is so awesome to be back with you doing another Facebook Live. And if you're listening to just the audio, you probably want to check out facebook.com/Phil Gerbishak, because you can watch the videos in real time, because today you're in for a super duper treat. Today we're talking to my triple threat co-star, Shasta Nelson. Shasta is a leading expert on friendship, her spirited and soulful voice for strong female relationships, though we're going to talk about relationships for everyone, guys, so do not think this is just for the women. Soulful voice for strong female relationships can be found in her books, Frientimacy, How to Deepen Friendships for Lifelong Health and Happiness, and, love this, Friendships Don't Just Happen, the guide to creating a meaningful circle of girlfriends. Shasta writes some great stuff. She's been on the Today Show with Katie Couric. She's been in the New York Times, Good Housekeeping, Health Magazine, Forbes, and holy crap, so much other stuff. She's awesome, and she's here with us. So what's up, Shasta? How are you?
Hello. I'm so happy to be with you.
Yay, I am so glad you're here. We've got a couple comments even to start us off. Holy crap, Debbie Shook is here with us. What's up, Debbie? Glad you are here. This is going to be awesome for you, my friend. We're so glad you're here. And before we even started, we got Sylvia Koblenz-Farbstein who says, yay, Shasta Nelson, not once, but twice. So she must be really excited.
2 yays, that's a good thing. Hi, Sylvia.
Yeah, cool.
And I'm glad you mentioned that this isn't just for women's friendship, because I am super passionate about men's friendships too.
I know, right? That's so
get me on that
important.
soapbox. Yeah, exactly.
Heck yeah. So cool. And now we got a Mosi Blaine who says, congrats, Shasta. I don't know. Did you win the lottery? What happened, Shasta? I'm excited.
I won talking to you. I mean, that's the congrats right there with Phil.
You're sweet. So cool. So awesome. So we got so much we can talk about, but let's just do a quick influence recap, because for those that are listening that are our fellow brothers and sisters in NSA land, National Speaker Association at the National Security Agency, that was yesterday. Right. So Shasta, we were on a triple threat with our buddy Nicholas Muir. You were the anchor person on our show, not like Ron Burgundy anchor man, but like that you carried the heavy weight. So let's talk about that, right? So we had a triple threat session, 20 minutes each. Talk to me about what the heck was going through your head as you're like, oh my gosh, I got two people in front of me and I got to bring this home.
Oh, I think we just all did it so well. It's amazing how they just all kind of played together. But our whole session was on social media. And what's interesting is I do not consider myself a social media guru by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I came home from Influence and was like, okay, I got to up my game. I got to start doing Facebook Lives. And, I come home and be like, I'm no complete stranger to any of the social media forums, but I haven't always been as strategic as I could. But what I was brought in to do was to talk about basically the research around what builds healthy relationships and what we can extrapolate from that of how we can build healthy online relationships. And where I think where it played in well with what you experts on social media were talking about, was really just kind of like recognizing that our audience is a relationship with us, and that social media is not just a place to be randomly updating, but to have the purpose to talk about how do we bond with our audience? What is it that builds that relationship and creates a relationship of trust and all that stuff? So I think you guys were the anchors on social media, but I certainly love coming in and I happen to believe that, like, when you talk about what is a healthy relationship, that impacts pretty much everything. I mean, I can tie it in if we were doing a health conference. I can tie it in if we were doing team building, leadership, marriage. It's really foundational to everything. So, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that relationships are important and relationships are foundational. And one of the things that you shared with us that I thought we would talk a little bit about today is your whole triangle of relationships. That was really the most powerful thing, this relationship triangle and the power of that. So can you take us through the triangle, please, Shasta, so people can understand that for those that weren't fortunate enough to be standing there cheering you on?
Oh, yes. And you get gold stars for remembering having the visual and all of that. So well done. Yeah, I call it my Frientimacy triangle. And in a nutshell, when I've done research over the last decade of what builds trust on our team, what makes for a healthy marriage, who do we call our best friend? When you just kind of look at basically like what when we're evaluating a healthy relationship, what are the things we're evaluating? And in all those different studies, while different researchers are studying different things, I was just like, wow, the same three things, and different words and different studies, but the same three things keep coming out again and again and again. And I call these the three requirements of all relationships. And when we understand these three, then every other element of a relationship falls under one of these three. But these three, how we live them out will look different on each of us, and what type of relationship it is we're building would, obviously the application of those three things would be different. But these three things are the three things that are the foundation to every single relationship. And at the bottom of the triangle is positivity. And positivity is just feeling good at the end of the day. It's like if you're walking away feeling icky about that team meeting, if you walk away feeling gross after that person's post on social media, if you walk away feeling competed with when you were sharing with your friend, like that's the opposite of what we're going for. A healthy relationship needs to leave us feeling good. And that means, you could probably throw out a ton of different examples in your relationships. It's anything that produces laughter, anything that produces empathy, it's kindness, it's anytime we're giving a gift to somebody, anything that's helping us feel good, like gratitude, compliments, affirmation, all that kind of stuff is the good feelings. And research is showing that we need 5 positive feelings for every negative feeling. So our goal here isn't to never have negative in the relationship. We're going to argue, we're going to disagree, we're going to not live up to each other's expectations. But the goal is to be adding value to our relationships, adding kindness, adding goodness in there every time we can. So that's the foundation. That one resonates with you, right? You do that very well all over the place. You're king of positivity.
Thank you. I certainly try, right? It's the hardest one though sometimes, because we're just bombarded with the negative crap, right? People, oh, I'm jealous of this. Oh, don't do that. Oh, boo-hoo, my wiener hurts. I hear all this stuff all the time, right? I'm both fortunate as well as cursed that I have 4,300 friends on Facebook, and I try to pay attention at least a little bit to every one of them. And yet, my goodness gracious, the sky is falling, Chicken Little, and yet it's not. The challenge with social is both the best and the worst of people comes out. It is an amplifier. It's not good or bad on its own. Yeah. I posted this the other day, right? People, oh, it's bad. Oh, it's good. No, it's not. You're bad or you're good. And it amplifies who the heck you are. So we have to be intentional about our positivity. And that's, it's a choice, right? Positivity is a choice. That's why it's foundational.
It is absolutely. And in fact, it's interesting you actually say it's one of the hardest ones, because I have a quiz. People can go to shastanelson.com, and there's a Frientimacy quiz, and it asks you 10 questions in each of the 3 requirements, and it gives you a score as to what kind of a friend you are and which of the 3 you need to work on the most. And it surprises everybody which one is the lowest one consistently, but you just named it. It's the positivity one is the one that most of us score the lowest on. And it doesn't mean going around being positive. It doesn't mean we don't talk about hard things and negative things. It means at the end of the day, leaving somebody feeling better for having been with our presence. And sometimes that's validating their feelings or empathy. It doesn't mean Pollyanna and being like, oh no, you shouldn't be sad, but it's walking away saying, I feel loved. And I feel affirmed. And that's what all of us are craving as we're interacting and bumping into each other all day long.
Yeah. Well, thank you for explaining positivity a little bit more for us, Shasta, because too often, I've had people come to me and say, wow, you're really positive. Is that just Pollyanna? Is that just because, everything is perfect for you? And I'm like, well, no, not even close. That's really lame to even ask someone. Nobody's life is perfect. Certainly, I feel very fortunate for the experience. Don't read into that says, oh, woe was Phil. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is that it's a choice, right? And I have to choose that. And the way that I look at things is positive more than the things that happen to me are positive.
Exactly. And how you leave people feeling is positive.
Yes,
and that's
absolutely. Right. Well, and I wish to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the end of the day. I have people who are writing and saying, my friendship is so toxic. And then they go on to describe how they feel worse about themselves and worse about their lives every time they're with somebody. And at the end of the day, you're like, this isn't a healthy relationship. And I'm not of the mindset that says that just means you just need to walk away from the person per se, but it does mean you need to look and say, so we can look at these 3 requirements, and we'll cover the other 2 in a second, but we can look and say the positivity is broken. This is feeling more negative than positive. So what can I do to repair that that? What can I do to add positivity into this relationship? What can I do to help induce more laughter? What can we go do that's fun together? What can we do that helps them feel more seen and more affirmed? And what can we do? So how do we repair this to add more positivity is the proactive choice that every single one of us has to make, even in crisis. I mean, even when I was going through my divorce, 15 years ago, it's not like I was walking around being like, oh, this is great, so much fun, life is fabulous. It was that, no, even when I'm in pain, I can still be curious about the other person's life and say, okay, enough about this. Tell me how you're doing. And that's an act of positivity. I can still say, thank you for listening. You have just been such a support. That's an act of positivity. So it doesn't mean I'm not talking about what hurts. It means I'm still showing up and saying thank you and expressing gratitude and cheering for their marriage, even, and saying, hey, no, I want to hear about the good things going on for you, and not being somebody who's shutting other people down because my pain is so big. And so it's not about being happy all the time. It's about making sure the other people feel loved. And yeah, we've said it, but really important point to hit, because if we're walking around leaving other people feeling worse about themselves, nobody's going to want to keep coming back. Nobody needs more of that. Yeah.
Which leads us. Yeah. Don't shoot holes in other people's buckets, right? Exactly.
We have enough things going on in our lives that making the holes. So. Yeah, which leads to the second requirement. And the second requirement is consistency. It's the repetition, it's the regularity, it's the putting in the time, it's the interaction, it's us like creating a structure of time together. And so if you can see why the positivity is on the bottom, because if it doesn't feel good, we're not going to want to keep coming back to this. And the consistency is meaning we have to come back. You and I can have met each other at Influence, loved each other, hugged each other, affirmed each other, enjoyed each other. And if we never interacted again, then we had a friendly encounter, but we did not start a friendship. A friendship has to have ongoing interaction in some form or another in order for it to be something that gets developed. And so it's not just all the people we like and have fun with. It's the people we like and have fun with and keep repeating that experience, because that consistency is what ultimately leads to trust. Because the more times I see you, the more times I can start getting a sense of how you interact. And the more times I get a sense of how you can interact, I start being able to predict how you're going to interact, because I'm like, Phil is always gives me a hug. And so then I expect that hug every time, right? And so one time when it doesn't happen, I go, wow, what's going on? Like, Phil didn't give me a hug, because we trust the people where we can predict what's going to happen. And the only way we can predict what's going to happen is having enough of a pattern, enough history built in order to create that expectation. So trust isn't something we just bestow on somebody. It's not like somebody's just a trustworthy person or not, and we have to like determine that and guess at the beginning. Trust is developed by the time we interact and by our consistency. This is crucial to every relationship, is just putting in the time repeatedly, building that history.
So this whole idea then of love at first sight is really friendship at first sight, or friendliness at first sight. And we really don't, until we put in the time, sometimes we the halo or the devil effect, right?
Yeah.
Right. We either think the good or the bad of them on a first impression, but that's not really what you're talking about here. You're talking about going beyond that, investing the time so we can start to see patterns and start to develop trust, right?
Absolutely. We certainly all have first impressions, and that happens. What we're talking about here is there's a lot of people I've met that I immediately liked and would love to become friends with and admired, but that doesn't just make us friends. Like, we have to interact on a more regular basis before that happens. And there's a whole bunch of people we've never become friends with for the lack of not having repeated interaction with each other. And so it has less to do, and I always say this and it kind of rubs some people, friendship has less to do with how much you like the other person and has more to do with how much you practice these three requirements of relationship. And we can see this in office dynamics and family relationships all the time. We become friends with the people we see on a more regular basis, not necessarily because, like, the people you work with, you're seeing them every day in the office. And if you had to line those people up with like 20 other options and you just met them at a cafe, the chance of you saying, I want to be her friend, I want to be friends with him, and you guys developing a friendship is somewhat low. But because you are seeing each other every single day at the office, that consistency, that's what ends up helping you bond. It's not that you chose them and liked them better than everybody else. It's because you had the consistency. And this is the one that makes friendship, when so many people say friendship was just so much easier when we were kids, it just happened automatically. And it's like, Consistency happened more automatically when we were kids. Like we didn't have to invite each other to go to school and schedule it 3 weeks out. We just saw each other all the time. So the consistency is the one that really helps us get to know each other.
That's interesting. So the fact that, we don't have those consistent relationships now, in fact, some of them we maybe see once or twice a year at a conference, or we see them, at the same event over and over, doesn't mean that we're friends. It doesn't mean we're not, but it doesn't mean that we have a deep relationship. So it's important that we make the time. Now, do you think, Shasta, that social media helps that, or does it hinder that? Does it give us the illusion of time, or does it really give us the time?
I would actually say it helps it. But I am a very big person, and I know you say this too in different forms. I say this all the time in a relationship. What is your purpose? And that is so, so important, because so what we're going to look, when you imagine this triangle, and we can post an image of it afterwards or whatever. When we imagine this triangle, every relationship starts at the bottom. And so our consistency starts at the bottom with somewhat less consistency. And the people we build the deepest intimacy with, I call it frientimacy, because I'm trying to remind all of our brains that I'm not talking about sexual intimacy, and that's where our culture tends to go. I'm talking about feeling known and meaningful in a close relationship, a deep relationship. That's at the top of the triangle. So when you talk about seeing somebody every year at the same conference, or even talking for a few minutes every month at a networking meeting, that's certainly consistency. And that is building a sense of expectation. But just keep in mind that will probably be a relationship that's lower on the triangle. As we go up the triangle, we see each other more frequently, our interactions more in depth, we're building more memories together. And so certainly all relationships up and down the triangle are valuable and meaningful. And so when we're looking at like social media, for example, it can actually support any relationship up and down that triangle. I feel closer to my best friends at the top of the triangle because I'm seeing pictures of their kids on the first day of school. Things that when we get together to talk, we probably wouldn't talk about or see necessarily. So it's supporting, it's filling in some of the gaps. But if at the end of the day, I'm lonely and want deeper friendships, I'm probably better off going and meeting a friend for dinner for 2 hours than I am spending 2 hours on social media, just kind of sprinkling a little bit everywhere. And so we got to know our purpose. Like what's the relationship I'm trying to build? Does that make sense?
So good. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And it's so good to hear that, the investment of time is really the best gift we can give our friends. The investment of time is really the only way to go really deep with people. It's not about, gifts. It's about time. You have to make that time to be consistent. That's such a great reminder. It's also why, if you really want to go deep and you can't see them, go to their social media profiles and actually spend time on just theirs. Read their updates, read their notes, read what they've written, spend some time there, because that does help. And if we think about that from a sales perspective, which is often the question that I get, well, why social media for sales? The answer is because even if the other person doesn't feel as close, we can get close, feel more empathy for them, hopefully understand their problems, so that when we do have the time to invest face to face, we have some more empathy, and it comes from a better place than a needy place. And I think that's important.
Totally. And I mean, we've talked about like a conference or something that we go to. I feel closer to, like, I met people last year at last year's conference for 5 minutes. It was not a powerful, amazing relationship, but because of social media, because we connected on Facebook, for example, then throughout the year, I'm seeing things about their life. So that next year when we see each other, I actually feel like I know them and can go and we can sit down and have a much more lengthy conversation because we know a little bit more about each other on what to connect on. And so it does certainly can be an accelerator and can be helpful for giving that sense of like, I know a little bit more about you. I feel like there's more I can connect with you on. And that matters in a huge way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we got another fan here. Bree Whedon says she's loving this. So thank you so much, Bree. We're so glad you're here. I'm loving this too. It's a lot of good stuff, Shasta. So we've got our first two pieces of our wonderful triangle here. We've got, the consistency, right? That's important. What's the third? What's the top? What do we got? What's the big piece?
All right. So if we just have positivity where we feel good and consistency where we see each other regularly, that's what we would call like a social group, which is fabulous and fun. And those are many of our relationships, and that's okay. The truth is, though, if we want friendships, if we want more meaningful friendships, if we want to move toward greater intimacy and better health in our relationships, the third requirement is vulnerability. And this is a requirement because this is how we get to know each other. This is our sharing of who we are with somebody else. This is our revealing. This is our kind of letting somebody in. It's letting us get to know each other. So this is crucial. Otherwise, it's just just going out and having fun together on a regular basis, which is important. But this is how we end up feeling close to each other. And what I want to say about the vulnerability is our culture talks a lot about this in context of like sharing our insecurities and shame, which is a part of it, undoubtedly, and an important part with our close relationships. But the truth of the matter is vulnerability is so much broader than that. I teach 5 different types in one of my books. And but just to give an example, another act of vulnerability is sharing things we're proud of, sharing our successes. That can be sometimes harder to do with our close friends than sharing what was not going well in our lives. Another act of vulnerability is talking about a subject that we haven't talked about in this friendship before. Another act of vulnerability is asking for help. For me to ask you, hey, how do you do this on social media? And that's an act of vulnerability that lets us feel closer to each other because it gives somebody else the opportunity to help you. Brainstorming, like in a corporate setting, and people are like, I don't know if we need vulnerability at work, because they picture people just sitting around and vomiting their life stories on each other. Vulnerability in the workplace is so important because that's where we brainstorm together. That's where we say, I don't think this is working. That's where we say, I need help with this. I don't know how to do this. I mean, these are things we want in our workplaces, but those all take a level of safety and a level of feeling like we have the space to share ourselves and express our needs. And so this one's really important. And let me just say one more thing about it in conjunction with the triangle. So you've got positivity on the bottom. It means we always, always, always have to have a foundation of positivity. Everything falls out of the triangle if that foundation drops. And then as we get to know each other, we start building up the consistency and the vulnerability up the triangle. And these two need to move up in tandem, incrementally. So as our consistency increases, so as we get to know each other and we're seeing each other again, and we're seeing each other again, so should our vulnerability increase at the same similar slow and incremental rate. And so the goal here is to never be somebody who just thinks that if you just like pour out all your problems and just tell everybody and I'm an open book and I just like, everyone needs to know everything about me. And we've got people who they might be kind and sit there and listen to you for 2 hours, but they're not going to want to repeat that experience very often. That's not appropriate level of sharing for a brand new relationship. And the flip side is not healthy either. For somebody you've known a long time and you've really seen each other and you've been there and you've built up that consistency, if you're still hiding yourself and not willing to let people in, then you're not building a healthy relationship either. The only way you can get to the top of the triangle, and I'm not advocating that we need to do this with everybody, but we do need to have a few people in our lives that we are willing to get to the top of the triangle with, which means the highest level of vulnerability and the highest level of consistency and commitment to each other. And just be mindful. I just want to share that these should be incremental. Vulnerability is about doing it in a safe and healthy way. And so you're never jumping off the high dive on this one. It should feel trusting because you've done it a little bit and they responded well. And so it should feel safe. And this is where the circle starts it's like you share, you start positivity. It feels good. You do it again and you have consistency. You share a little bit. So you're adding some getting to know each other. And then it hopefully feels good because they empathize or they relate or they validate or they do whatever feels good to that. Then you want to repeat the experience, which adds more consistency. And then you feel safe for sharing a little bit more, which adds, and you just kind of keep cycling through these 3 things. And these 3 things build a relationship. I can guarantee I can put any 2 people in a room and we do these 2 things and they will bond. This is what makes a relationship.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome and mind-blowingly cool. So 2 quick comments here, and then I'm going to add mine. So Herb Steiger says, great stuff. Thanks. So we're glad, Herb. Thank you for sharing. We're glad you're here. And then Debbie Shook says something, and Shasta, I'd love your take on this here before I move into mine. And Debbie says, getting older, it can become more difficult to keep close friends. You need them the most then, but it becomes harder, especially with ill health of a spouse. So what do you say about that? And how do we maybe help? We can't just heal an ill spouse, but hopefully we can offer some insight. So if you could just offer like maybe even just some encouraging words to Debbie, because I know this is really tough.
Absolutely. And I will just say, I think there's when I study the relationships at different ages, I will just say that there is really hard things about it at every single life stage. You know, when we're young and have kids, that consistency piece is really hard to have more than like a 5-minute conversation without getting interrupted. And when we're in our 20s and we're like, everybody's moving and every 2 years and getting married and like dating, I mean, it's so every life stage has its challenges. One of the benefits that comes with being older is that sometimes we start having more space and time in our lives to increase the consistency. Sometimes we know ourselves better and can be more and can be vulnerable in a healthier way. And we know what feels good. And so hopefully we can also do these 3 things with more wisdom and maturity. So I do want to just kind of invite the belief that it doesn't necessarily mean it gets harder. I think what age can sometimes do is that if we haven't stayed in touch with a bunch of relationships where we've had that consistency, we are kind of many times starting over. And that can be really challenging because we don't necessarily, we want it to feel easy. And just remember that what felt easy at some point was that we just had this big bulk of time together. In fact, there's a big study that just came out, and I share this at Influence, is that it takes we're self-reporting. When they study out of the University of Texas, they asked they tracked how many hours it took for us to feel close to each other. And I'm not a fan that all of us are in the same, I don't put hours in front of us like this needs to be a law for all of us, but we're self-reporting that it takes about 50 hours to move somebody from like somebody we don't know to like a close friend. It's taking 200 hours together before we feel like we're best friends. So when you think about just getting together for lunch once a month with somebody, let's say we do that for even an hour or 2, it's going to take a long time to build up those hours. Whereas if you're going away for a weekend together, if you're seeing each other on a weekly basis, if you're hanging out all day long together, those hours start building up. So one of the things I would say to Debbie is, be encouraged. It's not necessarily harder. It is very doable. It is hard when there's challenges with a spouse and all that kind of stuff. But I would invite you to reach out and to have that be part of your vulnerability. I would encourage you to reach out and try to log some of those hours in and I guess what I would say there is, be gentle on your new relationships at the bottom of the triangle. Don't judge them by people who are at the top of the triangle. So don't not repeat the experience because it wasn't super meaningful and deep. Remember that people at the bottom of the triangle shouldn't be acting like people at the top of the triangle. But the more we do it, the more we're going to get to that place where it feels really supportive and really good. It's like going to the gym. Like one time isn't going to like give you the results you want, but if you repeat it and you repeat it and you repeat it and you repeat it, then I can promise you the results. I can promise that. Like I can guarantee that if you practice these 3 things with a few select people, you will bond with people. And I can flip that. I can flip that guarantee to anybody that any relationship in your life right now that's not feeling good, it's because you could immediately look at it and one of these 3 things at least is in lack. And you can immediately say, oh, well, that's because I hardly ever see her or talk to her. Or like, oh, well, that's because when we get together, he never shares anything about his life and we just golf together. Like, oh, that's because every time, you can immediately start seeing which of these 3 would make the biggest difference in improving a relationship. So don't give up. These are 3 things we can do and they are within our control.
Awesome. So along that line, Mosey Blaine says, speaking of life and age changes, do you think it's healthy for the friendship levels to change?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I love about like a diagram, like a triangle. And I teach 5 circles too in a different context. But what it helps us do is it doesn't only show us how a relationship develops and builds, it also shows us how it can go down at times, down that triangle appropriately. What it says is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And so absolutely, there's times where one of my girlfriends had a baby and she just got pulled into another circle of baby friends and just kind of a little less available. And so our consistency dropped undoubtedly, but that doesn't mean the friendship is not there anymore. It just means that she dropped down on the triangle. And so importantly, my expectations of that friendship should drop. Remember, we need to have different expectations of friendships up and down this triangle. So what I expect, so that I'm not as frustrated with her because it's a different friendship. It has shifted. And so it's down lower. But then as life goes on, like we're consistent in a different way. Now we're talking once a month on the phone maybe. And so it looks different, but we still have ties and it can move back up undoubtedly. And it can move down. And our job is to not be resentful of our friends for one friend for not always being there. It's our job to have several friendships that can ebb and flow at the top of our triangle for us, for example. There's often examples of somebody who got hurt by somebody and they feel betrayed and they just are like, should I just get rid of this friendship? And I'm always like, well, what did they do? And so we kind of unpack it. And I'm just like, do they know they hurt you? And 90% of the time they don't. 90% of the time we got hurt because they didn't do something we wanted them to do. But it wouldn't be something that if we had a jury, all of us would be like, oh yeah, that's a bad friend. We would just be like, they probably didn't even know. And the truth of the matter is, we can then, if we get hurt, we can certainly lower our expectations. We can certainly try to lower that, but it doesn't mean we can't be at a party with these people. It doesn't mean we have to kick them out of our lives. So ask yourself, what is it that I can still trust them to do? I can still trust them to be in my life. I can still trust them at my birthday party. And I just may not trust them with secrets right now until we rebuild that and have that conversation. And so absolutely, relationships can move up and down that triangle appropriately. So they should be. Yeah.
Cool. So you're saying I should just always overshare with you, Shasta? Is that what you're telling me? You're my therapist now?
You took away some good from that, yeah.
I'm obviously kidding.
But I think I love that you brought that up because I think a lot of people, if we are, and most of us are lonely, the research of loneliness is staggering right now. And if most of us don't have people at the top of the triangle, if we have not developed relationships up, then we would be prone, you were joking, but we'd be prone to say, wow, actually Shasta's the most consistent person with me and she's so nice and I can share with her. And we can think she's my best friend because you can look at all your relationships and I might be the person closest to you. And so you would think I'm your best friend. But if you actually step back and say, wow, what's our level of relationship? You would actually, so to your point, it's a well-made point. We have to be very careful to say, just because that person feels the closest to you doesn't actually mean you've practiced all three of these behaviors on a long-term basis to warrant them being at the top of your triangle. And so, yeah, good point.
There we go. So you mean the 200 hours of video and the fact that you now have a camera in your bathroom, those don't count?
Hey, now that you just went down my triangle.
Dang it. So close. Just kidding. But I think that's interesting, right? And that's a really important point about the vulnerability and the consistency having to peak at the same time, because, it's interesting that as we feel more lonely, we feel more compelled to share more of ourselves, when often that will be the needy, repellent, oh my gosh, get the heck out of here. I met you 10 minutes ago. Why are you telling me about your warts, right? They're just like, stop. So I think that's a really good lesson for us, Shasta. Thank you.
Yeah. We have not been taught, and men, we can jump in on men here. Yeah. Men have not been encouraged or taught how to be vulnerable. But honestly, women haven't either. It's okay for women to be vulnerable. Like, we've allowed it. So we have a lot more practice being vulnerable. But the downside for women is we have done a lot of, there's a lot of studies that show relatability mattering more than anything else. And so as women, we've gotten into really bad habits. If one person's complaining about their kids or their marriage, we feel like we need to complain about that same thing to help that other person not feel judged, like that relatability thing. And so we can all start being vulnerable in a negative, competing, heavy way and overshare and be known for doing way too much processing and oversharing inappropriately. And the flip side for men is we basically have only told men it's okay to do that in romantic relationships. And so we have a lot of men who don't know how to be vulnerable and let their guard down and share their feelings unless they're with a woman often. And so that's a really unfortunate thing, because then the women end up becoming the emotional wells for all these men. And I have a theory, this is why men remarry after death and divorce faster than women, because the only place they can get that emotional need met is them being in another relationship, whereas women are allowed and encouraged to have a lot more of that intimacy with other women. The vulnerability, we as a culture have not done a good job of teaching what it is, teaching how to do it in a safe way. So this is a really big thing that is massive and we need to keep talking about.
Awesome. So another comment here, Susan Urban says, although the space and time can increase with age, however, then there's the challenge of people seeking to move away for retirement plans. She'd have never guessed that the early 50s would bring such transiency in relationships. And I totally see that. I mean, I'm pretty fortunate. I stayed in Milwaukee for 20 years. Now I'm in Tampa. It's only been 3 years. And the consistency is not there, and it's hard. So how do we combat that, Chest? I mean, is there? I know there's not a quick fix on time, right? I can't just pour more time in my bucket, but how can I make this faster, easier, better? I don't know. Well, I don't know what the word is here. I'm struggling here. Help me out.
No, we want to accelerate and do this with intention and with purpose. And I get that. And I will say the research shows that across from all ages, and I find this incredibly fascinating, supporting what several of you are saying about the aging thing. Across the board, we are replacing half our close friends every 7 years. So you think about who you confide, and these are close friends. These aren't just like acquaintances. So just think for a moment about who you were confiding in, who were your go-to people 7 years ago. And chances are high that of the 3 or 4 people that you would have said you were closest to 7 years ago, chances are high that 1 or 2 of them are different now. And chances are high that 7 years from now, 1 or 2 of those people. So it supports what Mosey was saying about the levels changing, the ebb and the flow. And it also supports that even all through our age, I think we are expecting in our younger life to be having to meet new friends and build those relationships. And I think what's throwing a lot of us off when we're aging is that we're just like, wow, I should have all these relationships figured out already. And the truth of the matter is we're still moving at the same rate as we get older. We're still changing jobs. We're still being with grandkids or not grandkids, whether we travel in retirement or not. And all these things still keep kind of causing those relationships to shift. And so you're right, our loneliness as aging Americans is super high because we often move to go be close to our kids and grandkids, but we're leaving behind all of our relationships. And we live in a culture, especially here in the United States, where moving is just seen as, yeah, it's a great job, I should move. And we don't really talk about the downside of it and how long it takes you to rebuild roots and how important that community is. Research is now showing that if you were to move for a job, you have to make $120,000 more in that new job to make up for the happiness of which, if you're leaving behind a community of friends and supportive tribe, of what the unhappiness that's going to come from leaving those relationships and having to start over. You need to be making up $120,000 a year to kind of like level out and be on an even playing field. So when we ask ourselves, do I want to move? We have not been taught to say, wow, I have family and friends here, and that should weigh very, very heavily on my move. And not to say we shouldn't move, but you're right. We live in a very transient culture. We live in a culture that has not practiced building friendships up outside of the workplace or outside of the kid's school or outside of that church or synagogue. And so when one of those things changes, when we go through a divorce, we're shifting our friends all the time. And I guess what I would say to help would be, I'm constantly encouraging people to stop and evaluate their relationships on this triangle and to look and say, who are the people that I'm most trying to like move toward the top and develop that intimacy with, and prioritize 5, 6 people that you're going to say, I'm going to put in the time with them. I'm going to keep inviting. I'm going to keep knowing that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who gave that invitation. It just matters that we're spending time together and interacting. I'm going to keep sharing a little bit about myself. I'm going to keep asking questions. I'm going to keep adding joy and adding value. And if you can at least narrow down the people that you would like to say, these are the relationships I'm investing in. And now you know the 3 things that if you keep putting those 3 things in the bucket, it will move those relationships up, and it can be accelerated with that kind of intention, if that helps any.
Yeah, that does help. But what about those suckwads that don't ever give back though? Right? You talked about vulnerability, right? And oversharing, but the undersharing is the same thing, right? The people that they're not sharing, they're not being vulnerable, and they're not giving you any time unless you're the one that initiates that. And I can tell you, that sucks. I have a couple of, I have a couple of my friends who, I live in Florida now, and people from the North like to come to Florida to visit. And I like to, I try my best to be available if I'm in town to visit with them. And sometimes, people come down, I know they're coming down, I make them an offer, they say they'll call me, and then they're here for a week, and then I never hear from them. And that isn't so cool, right? That's kind of hurtful and kind of sucky. So how do we, and then they, then they play the avoidance game right after the fact because they know they did something wrong, right? So for any of you friends like that are listening, I'm coming for you. Just look out. So Shasta, what's your hint to, not to the suckwad friend, but to the good friend who actually makes time for them when they say, well, these people don't pour back in? Should I just, discard them, firebomb their house? I mean, what's your suggestion?
It's a nuanced suggestion, and that's why I said kind of pick the 5 or 6 people that you're going to focus on, because you can't control which ones are actually going to move up the triangle. So with those, we hope that 2 or 3 of them, we need all 3 things in play to build a healthy relationship, and we certainly can't always control the other person and whether they have room in their lives and whether this is a priority and that sort of a thing. So we certainly need to be aware that we can't just pick you 4 people are going to be my best friend and like put that on them. And with that said, I think that we also need to be very mindful of the fact that how people give looks differently than how we give. Phil, I've stood, you and I are speakers, I've stood in rooms with thousands of people and I ask them, how many of you are the primary giver in your relationships? And like every hand goes up. And I'm just like, what? We have nobody who's the taker? You know, raise your hand if you're like the taker who like just takes more than all your friends. And like, without fail, it is amazing how everybody feels like the overgiver in their relationships. I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years and I have yet to meet somebody who's just like, I am that person who everybody's giving to and I do nothing for the friendship. And in fact, one study asked how many of us have a toxic friend who's one of our friends is like a toxic friend, and 84% of us said yes. So either we're all friends with the same 16% of toxic people, or else chances are high that they're saying that about us. You know, so I think at the end of the day, I have an entire chapter in my book to this question because it comes up all the time, as you can imagine. People in my world, they'll be like, well, I asked her out last time, and so I'm waiting for her. The ball's in her court, we'll say. And we kind of let friendships die simply because we don't want to reach out 2 or 3 times in a row, or because we get tired of doing that, or because we create a story that by doing that, it means we care more. When the truth of the matter is just not everybody's an initiator, and not everybody, when they travel to Florida, necessarily wants to go meet, like they might be there on a romantic trip. They might be there for something else. And so I think it's giving the graciousness a little bit to not think that the way we would give and how we're keeping track of how they give is the same way. I'm much more of the mind of like, hey, when you ask them to get together, do they say yes more often than not? Do you get together and have a good time? Do they share and engage when you're with them? And if the answer is yes, then you got what you need, and don't worry about who asked. You're building the relationship, and at the end of the day, you received from that. So let's not worry about who initiated as much as I always use the example of like my husband and I have a equal relationship around housework, but that does not mean he vacuums half the house and then leaves the vacuum cleaner right in the middle and then like waits for me to vacuum the other half. Like I do no vacuuming in this house. Like there's certain chores where one person does all of it. And at the end of the day, it matters less if we're the ones doing most of the inviting, and it matters more if at the end of the day, we're getting those 3 things into that relationship. And we need to change the narrative that says, if I'm getting these 3 things built up in the relationship, I might be feeling like I'm giving, but I'm obviously getting back too, because I'm building this relationship, and that's for me and that's for my sake. And I think the bummer is we just live in a world where we have not been taught friendship. We're doing friendship with people who are not mindful of it. They haven't thought about it. They haven't learned it. They haven't read a book. They haven't come to my talks. So we just have to be gentle. We have to keep teaching and modeling and remembering that we're working with people who want this so badly and don't know how to do it.
Wow. Expectations get in the way of good friendships so many times.
All the time.
Yeah.
And our fear of being rejected, and our fear of none of us wants to feel like we're the one who cares more, that we're chasing somebody, or that they're not thinking of us. I mean, we get hurt easily, understandably. It just goes to show how much this matters.
Yeah. Wow. Good stuff. 50 hours, Shasta says, to move up and become friends. 200 hours to get to be besties. So you're going to have to invest more than 1 lunch a week if you want to make this happen in a year, folks. So Shasta, last words here. What would you tell people if they're looking here to get started, other than obviously buy a copy of Frientimacy? I mean, truly, folks, you need to get a copy of this book. It's terrific, like Shasta is. It's got so much in it that you can get the whole girlfriend circles idea, not just for women. Okay.
I know. I keep apologizing to men. The publishers are not convinced that men will buy books on friendship, but the need is so high. So the books keep getting targeted to women. But yeah, guys, our guys in the US are some of the loneliest people. And I'll just I'll just end with that, Phil, and just say talk
to us about that.
The loneliness is, it's killing us literally. So there's studies right now that we're looking at people who like, for example, there's one study where we study people who have healthy lifestyle habits, so mostly caught by diet and exercise, and then those who don't have healthy lifestyle habits, and then those who are lonely and feel disconnected, and those who feel supported and connected. And it will not surprise anybody that those who have healthy lifestyle habits and feel connected live the longest, report being the healthiest, have the least amount of health issues. But it will surprise a lot of people that the second highest performing group are people with unhealthy lifestyle habits and who feel connected and supported. They outperform on a health and happiness level the people who are like doing their kale shakes and going to the gym but feel unsupported and disconnected. Our health is impacted way, 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 way more on how loved and supported we feel in this life. And so most of us are reporting walking around feeling networked, but not feeling connected. We might know more people than we've ever known, but we don't know if we really feel seen by a few people, and really we question whether they would be there for us. And that's what loneliness is. Loneliness doesn't mean we're some hermit out in a cave, not with social skills, and nobody likes us. And so often we don't even identify our loneliness because we're like, that's crazy, I'm popular, everyone likes me, I've got all these friends, and I'm busy every night socializing. Loneliness simply means you want to feel more seen and more connected and more supported and more loved. And that's your body telling you to take care of your body. Your body needs this. This is not some little women's issue. This is not some like little fluffy, how fun, let's go out and throw pink pom-poms and go have girls' night. This is like, take care of your life and your health, because relationships matter more than anything. If you feel disconnected, it's more harmful to your health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, twice as harmful as being obese, and does the equivalent damage of our bodies of being a lifelong alcoholic. And you think about how much attention we give to smoking and obesity and alcoholism, and our relationships matter even more. They can measure it in our bodies. They can measure the disease. They can measure the impact that loneliness has. So I'll just end by saying, I happen to think this really matters. And so no matter how discouraged you are, I really invite you to realize that loneliness is normal. Most of the people you're interacting with are lonely. They want this too. They don't know how to do it. You now know how to do it. So be somebody in this world who's willing to help put these things into play, to teach this, to model it, to be this at your office, at your home, at your church, at your synagogue, wherever you are. I just hope that we've converted you to be somebody who's a connector in this world, because we desperately, desperately need it.
Awesome. Shasta, you are fantastic, my friend.
Thanks
you
for
for
having
sharing
me.
so much. Heck yeah, this was great. So folks, if you're listening, if you're still with us here, think about the 3 things that Shasta talked about today. Positivity, which doesn't mean Pollyanna-ish. It means sharing your love, sharing your connectedness. Vulnerability and consistency that go up the triangle at the same pace, not oversharing, not undersharing. Can't buy more time, can't do it in 10 minutes a day. Need the time and the vulnerability. Guys and gals, make this happen. Check out Frientimacy. It's Shasta's book. It's fantastic. The website is shastanelson.com. That's SHASTA Nelson with an O.com. Check it out, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. I hope you learned as much as I did today, and I hope that you take the time to get reconnected with those that you want to be connected with and start investing in those that matter to you.